Can Sierra Leone finally get the job done at the spa? Let's talk about it on this Whitney Spotlight. Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets, here with a Whitney Stakes Spotlight, and this one is on your second choice, but a horse that always goes off as a favorite here at Saratoga, and that is Sierra Leone, your reigning Breeders' Cup Classic winner. Now, before we get into this Spotlight series, I want to just remind you to press that like and subscribe button here on NYRA Bets YouTube. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. Now, listen, folks, the Whitney Stakes is happening this Saturday. It's going to be a lot of fun. And what an amazing showdown between Sierra Leone, the reigning Breeders' Cup Classic winner, Fierceness, the reigning Travers winner, Jim Dandy winner, and a horse that loves Saratoga, as well as White Abarrio, who won the Whitney 2 years ago. So these are the big three. Wanted to do a little bit of a spotlight on each one of them, but let's dive into Sierra Leone, a horse that I find to be incredibly interesting for a variety of reasons. This is a $2.3 million son of gun runner who was so promising from the very first second he stepped on the track back in November of 2023. He had a dazzling debut at Aqueduct. That's right, at Aqueduct, folks. Not all great horses debut at Saratoga. Some of them debut down at the Big A. And Sierra Leone was one of those. Comes back in that very thrilling Remsen where he gets ahead of Dornoch, and Dornoch fights back and gets the win in that Remsen, then goes and wins the Risen Star, wins the Bluegrass, comes into the Kentucky Derby as one of your top choices, ultimately finishes second by a nose in that very thrilling finish with Mystic Dan, Sierra Leone, and Forever Young, where Forever Young and Sierra Leone are bumping against each other down the stretch, and I think probably hindering the chances of the other one winning the Kentucky Derby. But after that, he comes up here to Saratoga, and this is when he starts a string of races where he fails to come through as the post-time favorite. Runs in the Belmont Stakes first up at Saratoga. Loses to Dornoch and Mindframe that day while going off as the 8-5 favorite. Of course, was 11 lengths back in a 10-horse field. Made up a ton of ground, but ultimately finished third. Then goes to the Jim Dandy and goes off as your odds-on 4-5 favorite over Fierceness. Finishes second to Fierceness. Again, a 6-horse field, found himself 10 lengths back. Made a huge run, but ultimately Fierceness had more. Then goes to the Travers. Goes off as your 8-5 favorite yet again and loses to not only Fierceness, but Torpedo Anna, who actually, I would say, outfinished him in a lot of ways and had a stronger closing kick in those final 100 yards than he did. And so finishes third there. Then it feels like the bloom is off the rose, goes to the Breeders' Cup Classic, is 7-1 there, and gets the job done and wins. Because you have to understand that Breeders' Cup Classic featured a nuclear pace with a horse like Derma Sotogake up on the front end, running 44-4 opening half, 109-2 opening 6 furlongs, going 1.25 miles. This has always been a horse, when you see him physically, you know where the money went. You also know that he's going to like more distance. That's pretty obvious when you see him physically. He's a specimen of a horse. And the longer he goes, the better he gets. He also is a horse that, because of his running style, needs a significant amount of pace to run at. The first 2 starts of 2025, a little interesting. Goes to New Orleans and Fairgrounds, runs in that New Orleans Classic, and is in a 5-horse field. And that's always going to be a tough spot for him. Goes off as the 1-4 favorite in that day, overwhelmingly odds-on favorite, and gets beat, finishes third. Might be, you might say, well, the screws weren't tightened all the way. It's a short field. He found himself maybe a little closer to the pace than he normally is, and as a result, it didn't have that kick. Then you look at the Stephen Foster, shorter field. Doesn't go off as the favorite. Mindframe actually goes off as the favorite there and runs a 104 buyer. But again, some people would say he ran his best race that day. Yes and no. It was a short field. He found himself a little close to the pace, made a little bit of a move, fell back again, and then made another rally. And he's a horse that I just think if he's going to be that close to the pace, I think it mitigates his closing stride sometimes. I also would say that he needs certain types of fractions to run into, generally speaking. I think when he's at his best, if they get sub 111, then he's got a chance to really close into something. But you look at that, and that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule, because you could look, they ran sub 111 in that New Orleans Classic. Now, that was the first race off the bench in 4 months. So maybe you draw a line through that. They also ran sub 111 up here at the Belmont at Stakes at Saratoga, and he didn't get the job done then. So he needs a pace to run at. Now, he's going to have a little bit of a pace to run at on Saturday in this Jim Dandy because of his stablemate Contrary Thinking, because of a horse like Mama's Gold, because of a horse like Fierceness and Skippy Longstocking. These are all horses that like to be up on the front end. The thing is, a horse like Fierceness and Skippy Longstocking can rate. They've both shown that ability to sit just off the pace. They don't need to get to the lead. They're not ineffective when not getting to the lead. So he's going to need some of the horses to come back to him. He's going to need a pace. But I think more importantly than anything else, he's going to need to show he likes Saratoga, because he's 0 for 3 up here. And there was all sorts of buzz last year that he didn't like the track, that Chad Brown didn't like the way the track was playing at times, that he felt it was too speed favoring. And one thing I will say is, through the first 4 weeks of racing up here at Saratoga, that includes the Belmont Stakes racing, or I should say the 4th of July Racing Festival. Through the first 4 weeks of racing up here at Saratoga, there have been 25 two-turn dirt races, and over a fast track, which is what they're going to have on Saturday. Only 2 horses have closed from more than 3 lengths off the pace at the half-mile mark. All right? So only 2 out of 25, about 8%. So, yes, the track does play fair, I think, but you need to be closer than Sierra Leone normally is. Now, there's no likelihood this is going to be a 9-horse field, maybe even an 8-horse field. We'll see what happens with Disarm, who's cross-entered. Does seem like Mindframe will likely scratch. So an 8-horse field, but there's going to be some pace, and it could get strung out. So again, he could leave himself with a lot to do at the top of the stretch or around the turn. That's the thing about Sierra Leone is Flavian Pratt, I think, the jockey has figured out, I need to make a little bit of an earlier move on him, get him into contention at the top of the stretch. And he's right. The problem is, by doing that, you have to go wide. You rarely are going to make a middle move on the rail, because it's just that spot is rarely there for you to be able to do that. So as a result, Flavian always has to kick the horse out wide to make that early move, usually going down the backstretch and then around the turn to get this horse from dead last to 4th or something along those lines. And so that way at the top of the stretch, you're only 3 lengths back or 2 lengths back as opposed to 8 lengths back. It does seem like Sierra Leone has corrected his lugging in issues. He's 2-1 on the morning line. As a very short price, I think, for a horse that has failed to deliver as the favorite up here at Saratoga and is so pace-dependent and trip-dependent. So I think there are some questions with Sierra Leone. He's a very good horse. He has never missed the board in his career, a perfect 11 for 11. But I think you could also say he is a horse that has 4 career wins. One of those was in Maiden. One of those was in the Risen Star. One of those was in the Bluegrass. The Bluegrass featured a very fast pace. The Risen Star did not. The Risen Star was a very slow pace. Although I would also say he is not running against the likes of Track Phantom and Catching Freedom anymore. He's running against a different caliber of horse. The only other win he has is when they went absolutely nuclear in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he was able to close into that. I'm not saying he's a fluky horse by any stretch of the imagination. He's a legit horse. He's a really, really good horse, and he's going to be a really good sire, too, one day. But I just question whether he's going to be able to get the job done on Saturday. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this contender spotlight for Sierra Leone. Remember to press that like and subscribe button here on NYRA Bets YouTube. My name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races, and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.